Okay, you may proceed.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Carinci, and I'm the Vice Chair of CreateTO. Clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, and in the absence of the chair, I'd like to call meeting number 17 of CreateTO to order. Welcome, everyone. This meeting is being held using the city's WebEx technology with members and staff connecting by video conference or calling in. We ask for your patience with any delays and technical issues. Members of the public can observe the meeting on YouTube. A few reminders. Members and staff, please keep your microphones on mute unless you need to answer a question or speak. Members, if you wish to speak, have your video on and raise your hand or unmute your mic and let me know. Staff, please keep video turned off until you need to speak or answer a question. Although we are in different locations and meeting remotely today, CreateTO acknowledges the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Before we begin the meeting, there are a couple of changes on our board. Jane Beattie has completed her term, and I know the board members will all join me in acknowledging her contributions and extending the board's appreciation for her service. We also would like to welcome a new member to the board, Marnie Dicker, who was appointed by City Council last week and joins us today for the first time. Welcome, Marnie. And Marnie, maybe you could introduce yourself to the board and say hello.
Thanks very much, Ron. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. I am absolutely delighted to be here this morning. Excuse me. Delighted to be here this morning and look very forward to serving on this board of Create Toronto and serving the City of Toronto. I come from a background of real estate infrastructure, and I look forward to making valuable contributions to this board.
Well, thank you, and look forward to working with you, Marnie.
Thanks.
Okay, so off to our business at hand. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? And not seeing any hands or voices, I will see none. And we've got 7 items on the agenda today, and we'll go through them in the order listed. RA 17.1, which is the second quarter financial results. There is a staff report with a recommendation, and I'll ask our CEO, Brian, to provide an overview or pass it along. Brian?
Morning, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm going to pass it on to our Chief Financial Officer, Jaspreet Kulasingham, who will give us a brief overview. Jaspreet?
Thanks, Brian, and good morning, everyone. If I could turn everyone's attention to Table 1 of the report. Here you can see that CreateTO had a favorable variance for Q2 of $480,000 as it relates to its total expenditures. This is primarily related to the timing of these expenditures, in particular relating to the project investigative costs. Looking ahead for 2020, we are predicting that our total expenditures will come in line with our approved budget of $14.4 million. And with that, I'll just stop and see if there's any questions. If not, I'll turn it back to the chair.
All right, do we have any questions of staff on this item? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, so if that's the case, I will move to adopt the recommendation.
Ron, I just had one question. How many staff are there currently at CreateTO, Jaspreet?
Currently, there are 64 staff as part of the approved budget, and then we've recently had 4 transfers come over from CREM for a total of 68 staff.
64 FTEs?
So there's actually 68 FTEs right now on staff. But if you go back to our approved FTE complement, it was 64. We've just had a recent 4 transfer over from CREM. So the updated number is 68.
And is there a policy that CreateTO has for transfers from the city?
We're working through that with the city right now. That's something that we're in ongoing discussions as part of the 2021 budget process.
And so there must be a policy somewhere to be able to do that.
There is a policy, so typically it happens through, there's quarterly reporting that happens with the city, and any transfers are done as part of that. Given right now we're going through the budget process, city finance thought it would just be more efficient to go through the budget process rather than going through the quarterly reporting process. It would just be more timely. So that's what we're doing.
Are those posted positions or just transferred in, and who makes the decision they're required?
I wasn't involved in that conversation,
Okay.
So, but happy
That's
to.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about money, so you're just telling me that's there. I'm interested in the policy and how that works, and I'm not sure that the board is aware that that's an ongoing piece. So thank you. Thank you for answering that.
And we can definitely have a more wholesome conversation when we present the budget at our next board meeting, because I think I'll have a lot of the answers to the questions you're bringing up right now.
Great, thanks so much.
Mr. Chair,
Councillor Bailao, so I see your hand.
yeah, just following up on that question. When you say there's more transfers from CREM to Create, is it the funds, the FTE allocation got transferred from CREM to Create, or just the people came over from CREM? What got transferred? Just the people, or the positions with the salaries got transferred?
So it was the people that got transferred with the positions. So these were activities that were better suited. As part of the overall real estate, citywide real estate transformation, there were certain activities that were better suited in CreateTO. They were more strategic, more high level. There were other activities better suited for CREM. So this was always part of the journey that we anticipated, where we would have people or positions being transferred.
The FTE allocation itself, right? The FTE allocation.
So we're in the process of having that formalized through the budget process, the FTE allocation. And in this case, those positions were held by individuals, so those individuals transferred as well.
That is, sorry, I'm Ron, it's me again. Oh. Just following up on that. And is that a board policy or a city policy, or what policy is that, number one? And number two, since that's happening, I'm a little surprised that it's so difficult to transfer in the Toronto Community Housing staff. So I'll just flag that for everybody. But I think the board needs to understand how this all works, or at least I do. Maybe other board members don't, but I certainly do. Mr. Chair.
So happy to have a more wholesome conversation when we return as part of the next board meeting and present the 2021 budget. Unfortunately, I don't have all the policy answers for you because we are actually working through this in real time with city finance right now. But I do have a meeting next week, and the goal is to have all of this sorted out.
I think there's an HR policy part here that isn't clear to me either. So I'm not hearing a lot of people say, I don't want to know that. So I think the board understanding how that's all works and what our requirements are, etc., is quite important. And who makes those decisions, and who makes those decisions, I don't know, to do the direct transfers. Is that a city decision, a CREM decision, or was it a CEO decision? Or you can tell me later when we have this conversation. I don't want to spend too much time on that, Mr. Chair. I just want to flag it. Thanks so much, everybody.
Yeah, I would recommend that we hold this conversation to the next board meeting, because we'll have all the information then, and we can have a wholesome conversation.
That's correct, and the board can then understand its role. Thanks so much, Preet. Thanks.
No problem.
All right, thanks for the questions. Are there any other questions of staff? Okay, I don't see any. Then I'll move to adopt the recommendations to receive the report. All those in favor, if I could please see everybody's hand I see Paula's hand. All I see is her hand. That's fine. Okay, Councillor Bailao, Marnie.
I'm in favor.
Dennis, thank you. Marcy, thanks. I think I've got everybody. Thank you. So that motion carries. All right. Off to RA 17.2, the Housing Now Progress Update. Over to you, Brian.
Thanks, Mr. Vice Chair. This is the regular recurring update on where we are with regards to the Housing Now. And the board may recall that we've given a direct carriage of the whole project to Salima Raji. But Don Logie who's the Senior Vice President, will introduce it. And then I presume, Don, you're going to ask Salima to give us some further thoughts on what's going on. Don?
Thank you, Brian. Yes, as Brian has said, Salima returned from maternity leave 2 months ago and has climbed a very steep curve to get up to speed on the Housing Now. She's been put in charge of it, and so I'd like her to give the review of our progress for you today. Salima?
Thank you so much, Don and Brian. Thank you to the board and the chair for the opportunity to address the board today with the Housing Now update. Before I get into the details, I just would like to acknowledge the focus and dedication of the CreateTO staff, as well as our partners in the Housing Secretariat, City Legal, and Planning for the incredibly productive few months we've had since our last opportunity to address the board. What you have on the screen in front of you, or should have on the screen in front of you, is a new tracker that we're looking to include in your monthly updates. And what this is meant to show you is progress from the last board meeting, shown in gray, what projects are moving and which ones are stalled through the color coding green, yellow, and red tag on the left-hand column of the screen, as well as where different projects are in stages of our phases of development cycle. I'll start with I'll go through the project updates. It won't be in the same order as on the tracker, but just in the traditional order that we've given them to you, and the same order that they show up in your report. So the first is 777 Victoria Park. Lease negotiations are nearing complete on 777 Victoria Park. Our expectation is that the documentation will be finalized this month. Due diligence is also proceeding. The developer is currently testing its business model against what it sees as impacts to rental rates and occupancy levels due to COVID-19. The developer's due diligence conditions have been broken out into 5 parts, and the first of those 5 was actually waived yesterday. So we are making progress by seeing that waiver come in yesterday. We expect the remaining conditions to be waived by the beginning of November or mid-November. On 50 Wilson Heights, we have a signed term sheet, which is great progress from our last board update. The lease documentation, the agreement of purchase and sale, the contribution agreement, as well as the project agreement have been drafted and sent to the developer for review. We are meeting with them on October 19th to begin review of their commentary. The developer has also been actively working on their site plan application, and we do expect that to be submitted this quarter. On 705 Warden, at our last board meeting, you will recall that we brought forward a revised business case in which you approved. The property was released to market on August 10th, and bids were received back on October 7th. They are currently under review and evaluation by CreateTO staff and under the direction of our fairness monitor. We are encouraged by the response of the market and look forward to returning to the board with recommendation at our next meeting. On Bloor Kipling and Bloor Islington, the block context plan work for each site has proceeded well over the last 2 months. And you'll recall from our last update, that was something that we were actively working on. Both sites actually visited design review panel yesterday on October 8th and had overall positive reviews. The pre-development work will continue over the quarter with zoning submissions on both sites targeted for Q1 2021 and entering the market in Q2 or Q3 2021, depending on the progress of zoning. On 770 Don Mills and 805 Don Mills, the province actually has just recently this week released details on the alignment of the above grade infrastructure to support the Ontario line. This actually has impacts to our plan at 805 Don Mills, and so we're currently working with our architects to understand the impacts of that Ontario line on the plan project. At 770, We're also working with our architects to understand land impacts that are likely to be had as a result of a land swap deal we've done with the Toronto Lands Corp to incorporate a TDSD school on the site. It's likely that we'll need land from Infrastructure Ontario, from the Science Centre to the south, so we're actively working with that. As we move into the phase 2 projects, 405 Sherbourne and 1631 Queen Street East have great progress. The architectural consultants have been onboarded. Pre-development concepts due diligence work is underway. We are planning on a community consultation and design review panel for both this quarter. For 405 Sherbourne, we're planning that for the end of November, November 26th design review panel. And for 1631 Queen East, the beginning of December, December 10th is the target for design review panel. Community consultations will likely be had the same week as for each file as design review panel. On 150 Queens Wharf, 2444 Eglinton Avenue East, and 158 Borough Drive, we have our consultant RFPs in the market. Our expectation is that the teams will be onboarded and that we'll have preliminary concepts completed by the end of the calendar year. On 251 Esther Shiner, which is a phase 1 file, but a larger file, the team is working through the block context plan actively with our partners in planning. There's a particular focus there on relocating a current fuel station use it's part of the industrial yards. And a first community consultation is actually targeted for November. And then on Danforth Barns, a consultant team is being assembled to carry on the next steps of the master plan on the direction of the council adopted plan for the site. The idea there is to define the long-term opportunities for housing as well as the interim uses for the barns. The last 3 sites, 140 Merton, they're in 140 Merton, the RFP is ready for launch, but we're waiting for some sign-offs to do with budget. And then 1250 Eglinton West and 3933 Keel Street are on hold due to LRT construction. That's all for my update, Chair.
Well, thank you very much. There are any questions of staff? Okay, Councillor Bailao.
Thank you. Welcome back, Salima, and thanks for your presentation. With regards to the term sheet that we got on Wilson and 777 Victoria. Are we online with everything that was agreed before? Like the Wilson, we've signed a term sheet. Is there any deviation from the program as it was conceptualized? And
my understanding, thank you for the question, Councillor. My understanding is the term sheets on both 50 Wilson Heights and 77 Victoria Park are in line with the business cases that were brought forward to the board.
So there was no adjustments that needed to be made so far. Everything is on track, just delayed because of the further due diligence that had to be done. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Dawn, I would ask you to confirm because I wasn't actually the one that brought the business cases forward. So just a double check would be appreciated, Dawn.
Yeah, no, the issues that were negotiated in the term sheet had to do with details around performance, security, and other sort of minor issues. But the principal business terms, the affordable housing objectives, everything is maintained as they bid.
And so, when will we be announcing the partner at Wilson?
Our intention is to announce the partners at Wilson and at Vic Park as soon as due diligence conditions are waived and they're in a binding situation. So we're hoping before the end of the year.
Okay. Okay. And for the new sites, when on the report you said consultants on RFP in the market. What do you mean by that?
So each site has a team of consultants that contribute to the zoning submissions, and we go through a RFP process. So we have qualified rosters, and we put it out to the roster and allow an open process for the teams working on the actual projects. Architects, traffic consultants, civil consultants, those types of things.
I know that I had brought up this conversation before because there's always been the discussion of should we try to go with one of our sites without having the zoning done to see what the market is and if, this how that method compares to the method that we're using. Has the team had any further conversations about this? If this makes sense, if that is a possibility of testing the market that way?
Maybe I can answer this, Councillor. I think the issue of zoning, the reason we did the zoning was, as you know, to reduce risk. And with this, in this COVID area, there are a lot more risk. There are a lot more concerns about risk in the development community because of the unknowns. However, having said that, we are looking at some of the properties to see if the current permissions are close enough that it would be a reasonable thing to do, as you suggest, that is not to do the zoning. So as we go through some of the next 5 or 6 properties, we'll look at that. And we can report back on in December on whether we recommend any.
Okay, great. And 1250 Eglinton, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there was a motion actually passed at council to maximize density on the site to have as much affordable housing as possible, and actually included into this project that is being done on Eglinton. Is this gonna? Yeah, is this gonna impact your work plan in any ways, or can you still go into that process with these timelines that you presented to us?
At the moment on 1250 Eglinton Avenue West, we actually can't get access to the site to complete our real property due diligence, like our environmental due diligence or our survey work, which is an important input at the base level, because they're constructing a secondary access box for the LRP. So we're just on hold at the moment in that regard. But John, thoughts around timing?
Yeah, I think the right now the LRT is now late. I think it's late 2022 that it opens, and we won't be able to even touch that site until then. However, we will be starting next year some planning work. And the biggest challenge with 1250 is that it backs onto single family homes. And, the application that planning has of things like angular planes make it very difficult to get anything above 6 or 7 stories. One of the other things where we are exploring is that the neighboring property owners have come to us to see if we could join the properties, and that may be an opportunity to get more density on this site.
So there's still time. I mean, especially now with it's okay, great. Thank you. Those were my questions.
I have some questions, Mr. Chair, if no one else does.
Go ahead, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. I'm just welcome back from your maternity leave. It's nice to have you. And I'm wondering if when we have this chart, and I think it's a great chart because it's really easy to read, but there's 2 things. I think the pieces that are being held up because of the Ontario line or other transit issues should be clustered, and that, as you just said, Dawn, that will be 2022 before we can even get on the site. So they have encumbrances, and I believe that should be shown in that way. So we also have the number of units that are encumbered by that, and then we'll hear how those things are going to be worked through. I would just appreciate a column that indicates if it's close to transit, because that's a whole other feature. I think that the Eglinton one is close to transit. 1250 Eglinton, are they close to a major station? So I know that Warden is, and I think Wilson Heights is. So it's a pretty big factor, and it's great that they are, and the number of sites that we're freeing up that are on a transit line. I just have a question about the roster that was developed. I'm assuming it was done through an RFP to put people onto that, or was it carried over from the legacy corporations?
It was carried over from the legacy corporations, but we're actually in the process right now of refreshing the roster. The architectural roster, which is the main consultant on the file, is being refreshed, and it's an open call process that will be posted on MERX. Our objective right now is to have that completed by the end of December, and it should be posted somewhere in late October on MERX.
Okay, good. And because we have our new board member, and welcome, very happy that you're here. I'm sure you'll be ably fill Jane's shoes. The issue about the warden density, and I think it's just important to run that over again for Marnie, that if somebody would just like to do that got sent back in order to achieve greater density on that site. If you don't mind. Yep.
John, would you like me to review it, or would you?
Sure, if you're okay.
Sure, no problem. So this site, 705 Warden, was sent out to market with the first batch of sites that were released, which included 50 Wilson Heights and 777 Victoria Park. When bids came in, there was a significant subsidy asked by the developers to complete the project. And so our board directed us to go back and increase density on the project to see if we could close the gap. We worked with our partners at City Planning, and were able to achieve a rezoned. We went back in and did a rezoning that was completed in June, and released the new project with the new stats to the market in August. What we've seen come back is very encouraging. We can talk about details, but probably would have to go on camera for you on that. But the strategy, I think, did work. It allowed new bids to come forward that do look promising.
So our strategy was to increase the density and put it back out, right? Put it back out. Thank you. Okay. And lastly, just about the rezoning, there's a number of different concepts that are underway at the city as far as looking at a site and the concept of the site, what could be on the site with the housing secretariat in order to maximize the density. So there have been a number of other examples for certain sites, I know on Queen Street, where that actually, I don't want to say it was pre-zoned, but the concept was approved by City Council. And I'm wondering if Abby Bond could address that, please. Who's here, and if everyone doesn't know her, head of the Housing Secretariat. Thank you.
Good morning, Councillor.
Good morning.
And good morning to the board. It seems like we have had some success with that approach, and we need to do some more work with Salima and her team to see what's possible here. But yes, we've taken a proactive approach with our planning colleagues to try and find ways to add more affordability and more density where it's appropriate, and we will continue to do that.
So I haven't heard that from the CreateTO staff. I've heard we have go to rezoning and we get that done and we send that out. And I'm wondering how, Mr. Chair, we can direct that closer integration with the Housing Secretariat and that skill set vis-a-vis and that concept that they've been working with to be entered into the process that we have, because we have two different things going on here. How would you like to handle that, Ron?
Well, my expectation was that they were coordinating, but what would we want to make a motion to?
Let's just why don't we ask to have that reviewed and come back to look at opportunities. I won't make a formal motion, but ask our staff to work with the Housing Secretariat to come back and look at opportunities to speed it up, maximize the total benefits of the site using the housing model that was approved by City Council. I don't have that written down, but I think everybody's heard that. And when we come back to the next time we have this, I'd like to have that really examined very closely and have something back jointly from Housing Secretariat and our staff. Does that make sense to you?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Councillor, could I just clarify?
Sure.
We are working closely with the team at CreateTO, and so we've been very involved and will continue to be involved in ensuring that any sites that come forward have been optimized for density.
I understand. I'm sure you are, but deciding on what the concept would be, rather than now going out and then go to a rezoning and then start there. It just seems that there's an ability to create the site, the vision, and then it's just a little different. I thank you for clarifying. I just heard that we'll do everything and then we'll go to rezone it. We had to go back for Warden, and it took quite a long time. So I don't know if you'd been involved at that point or not, but there's only so many sites that we have. And I'm happy to hear back how you've been doing that on all of these sites. No problem.
Yeah, and if there's any further work that input that we can give around the concept so that we can avoid that situation again, we all, I think the team in both the Housing Secretariat and CreateTO understand that we don't want to be reissuing sites like that. So we're happy to continue to support around both the concept and also the discussions around density.
Because you do have another one up today, 1250 Eglinton's now come back up. I think in phase 2, if that hasn't been an approach, that I'd like to make sure that approach, that you're joined at the hip around maximizing those sites there, including all of them.
We're, Councillor and Mr. Chair, we're very aware of the need to maximize density and not to be seen as losing the opportunity for more affordable housing. And we have a process that we do work, and I think maybe it would be helpful if we took you through a couple of examples, if that would be, of how we do it, working with planning and with the Housing Secretariat to come up with the maximum density and design concept.
I don't think that's for today, Don. I don't think that's for today, but I'm happy to do that. But I'm looking at 1627 Danforth with 200 units. I don't know how many buildings that's across. It's at a major corner, and those kinds of things. I'm putting everybody on notice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if that would be helpful, we're happy to do that at a subsequent board meeting.
Yes, because they'll keep being sent back.
All right, let's make a note to have that, and you can spell that out maybe in an update in our following board meeting. So on this item for Housing Now update, is there any other questions that we have for staff?
It's Marnie, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
So I am not going to ask any direct questions, being a board member for only the last 30 minutes. This is an education for me. What I would like to ask is if I could please arrange a session with you, Salima, or anyone else that you feel is appropriate, so I can get brought up to speed as to where we're at on these projects right now, so I can be much more effective the next time we're talking.
It would be our pleasure, Marnie.
Thank you. So we can take that offline and set that up, please.
It'd be great to have Abby in that conversation too, Salima, just so, Marnie, you understand the Housing Secretariat, which is new, and their role, if that's okay.
Wonderful. I'd appreciate that.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I will move to adopt the recommendations to receive the report for information. All those in favor?
Aye.
3, 4. Paula, thank you. Dennis, was that you?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, thanks, got it. Okay, that motion carries. Okay, before I go on to RA 17.3, just an administrative cleanup item. I should have confirmed the minutes of our meeting of July 23rd, 2020, August 25th, 2020, and September 30th, 2020. And I will move to confirm those minutes. Can I I'm going to ask everybody else if they're in favor of moving those minutes. I think, Paula, do you have your hand up there?
Yes, I do. When you see that,
Yeah.
it's my hand.
Yeah, okay. Do you have a question with respect to the minutes?
No, I'm voting on them.
Oh, you're okay. All right. Well, then I'll take your vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Marcy, thanks to Councillor Marty. Aye. Okay, that passes. Thank you. And now back to RA 17.3 Modular Housing Progress Update. Again, Brian, for you to give us an update or pass it along to those who will.
Just as a refresher, this thing is modular housing sort of popped up on our radar in April as a result of COVID-19 desire by the city to produce some affordable housing quickly. And obviously working with the housing secretary, we're 6 months into this. It's been moving at, I would regard as light speed. And it's been spearheaded by Mike Whalen, who's our senior vice president, ably assisted by Samantha Zavaglia. Mike, do you want to give us a brief rundown on where we are with this?
Yes, Brian, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and I'm pleased to provide you with an update on the modular housing program since we last spoke on June 12th. I'd also like to acknowledge our colleagues at the Housing Secretariat, City Planning, and the Building Department, who've all been extremely collaborative and working very hard on this important initiative. It's been a great team effort by the city as a whole. So as you may recall, phase 1 of the program consists of 100 residential homes, which are being constructed on 2 sites. The homes are being manufactured and constructed by NRB Inc., which is wholly owned by Horizon North. And NRB's manufacturing facility is located in Grimsby, Ontario. The first site being developed is located at 11 Macy Avenue in Scarborough, which is near the intersection of Danforth and Victoria Park Avenue in Ward 20. It's Councillor Crawford's ward, and it will house 56 modular homes. The second site is 150 Harrison Street, which is located just north of Dundas Street West and Dovercourt Road. This is located in Ward 9, Deputy Mayor Bylaws Ward, and this will house 44 modular homes. The construction management of the project is being overseen by the city's real estate management group, CREM. However, we continue to provide oversight in phase 1 on an ongoing basis, working collaboratively with our colleagues at CREM and the Housing Secretariat. So I just want you to be cognizant of the fact that we're not going away, and we're still intimately involved. Construction commenced at 11 Macy on September 1st. They've completed the excavation work, and they've also completed approximately 70% of the foundations. Craning will commence on October 19th, and the project is actually a couple weeks behind schedule now, which was brought to our attention just recently, and this is due to latent defects below grade discovered during excavation. Portions of the structure of the building previously located on the property, including walls and concrete slabs, were demolished and buried in the ground and had to be removed along with the existing foundations, which has caused the delay in the excavation work. So the project's approximately 2 weeks behind schedule and will now be completed on December 2nd. Construction commenced on 150 Harrison Street this week on Wednesday, October the 7th. Training scheduled for November the 9th. And NRB is actually working towards a completion date of mid-December, despite some of the startup delays on the site. Phase 2 of the modular housing program consists of 150 new modular homes, which we anticipate will require 3 sites to build them out. We're using the same site criteria as phase 1 to select the sites, and we anticipate having these sites finalized over the next several weeks. Due diligence is currently being undertaken on the city-owned land to determine the suitable sites for activation of phase 2. Now, for phase 2, we're undertaking a two-step process to select a qualified manufacturers for the design build of the new modular homes. The first step included the issuance of requests for supplier qualifications, which closed on September 25th. We had 38 firms view the opportunity on Merck's, 6 firms submitted intentions to bid, and we received 5 proposals, which are currently being reviewed and evaluated by CREM and CreateTO. We anticipate finalizing the roster in the next week and issuing an RFP, or request for proposals, for the new modular homes the week of the 19th, and selecting a successful proponent or proponents in late November, early December. Attached to the reports are a series of photographs of the progress on the manufacturing of the modules of 11 Macy Avenue from NRB's facility in Grimsby, and there's also a photograph of the construction activity in the sites for your information. So at this time, I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have modular program. I believe my colleague, Samantha Valley, who's been the project manager on this and doing an excellent job, is on the phone. She was having difficulties this morning getting into WebEx with her computer. So, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to turn it over to you and answer any questions that may be coming from the board.
Sure. Do we have any questions of staff? I am not seeing any questions of staff. Okay, well then, great, and thank you very much for the presentation. I will move to adopt the recommendations to receive the report for information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All those in favor? Thank you, Marcy.
Aye.
Councillor Bila. Dennis, thanks. Councillor Fletcher. And Marnie. And Sandra, I don't see.
Yes.
Thanks, Marnie. Thanks, Sandra. Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Fletcher, are you there?
She's waving at you. Hand is up.
It's up.
Hand is up.
And my voice, I'm saying yes.
Okay, sorry. My screen must be really bad because I'm not seeing the video on Paula. So, okay, thank you. That motion carries. Okay, so we've got RA 17.4, the proposal for long-term land lease. If there is a confidential attachment for this, which everyone has. So the question that I have is if there's going to be any questions or comments with respect to this, I would probably stand this down to our closed session. So if not, we can just adopt.
Why don't you just, I think you should just move that to close. I just have a couple of questions about that, Mr. Chair. Okay,
perfect. We'll move that to close. RA 17.5, Auditor General's Office, review of 268th Street land transaction. There is a report from the City Auditor General, and the clerk advises there was a revised attachment which was posted. The Auditor General is actually here today. Unfortunately, my screen doesn't really bring
I am here, yes.
Oh, there we go.
Good morning, committee. Good morning, Chair and Vice Chair.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So may we wish to ask the Auditor General to provide an overview and also ask Brian to speak to the matter?
Sure. As an overview, we received a request to review a transaction that had been processed through the board of 268th Street. And there's really 3 areas of concern that were brought to our attention. One was whether you received fair market value. The second was the process of the special meeting call appropriate? And the third was were jobs maximized? And when we undertake these reviews, any land transaction, really any investigation, we approach it like an onion. We look at the first layer, the second layer, and we go deeper and deeper as required, balancing the risk. And when we started to look at this transaction, the first thing we did was hire an independent, qualified real estate appraiser. And he confirmed to us on the first issue of concern that fair market value was achieved in the process. On the second item around the special meetings, we did some work and we confirmed that we were satisfied that proper processes were followed and that there was nothing untoward that we saw in setting up the meeting processes. And so we were satisfied with the second issue. And then on the third issue, we didn't go very deep because first of all, we found that the first two parts were fine, as we just described. And we saw that the process was that you had a competitive process to hire somebody to advertise the property, and then you had an open bidding process. And jobs were something that was included, but actually the information related to the jobs was not great on any of the proponents that we saw. So we felt that the process actually overall was fair. It seemed to be conducted properly. So we had no concerns in relation to this transaction.
All
Any
right,
questions?
No, thank you very much for
Yes,
that.
I do.
Let's hear it.
Maybe, sorry, Brian's on, sorry.
Yeah, so Brian, did you have any comments or can we go straight to questions?
I'll go straight to questions. I mean, I think the Auditor General stated it well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I think it sounded like Councillor Fletcher, you had a question?
Yes, I do. I think that I'm wondering, nice to see you, Madam Auditor General. Always.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
That just to go into a few more details on this site that perhaps you didn't look at, that for the site was zoned industrial and it was sold as industrial, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And the second bit wished to rezone to commercial condos. Is that correct?
For the proponent, I'll have to take it away and look at that. I just don't look at my notes here.
I believe that's the case. It'd be good to know.
Yeah.
And that the city, I'm not sure that economic development looking to maintain, this is in an employment area zoned for employment, that I believe the economic development, and I'll ask you, Mr. Chair, was very happy to maintain this in this type of industrial use. Is that correct? Not Mr. Chair, the CEO.
Yeah, that's correct.
Was there any inkling that city planning and economic development would be happy to have that rezoned to commercial condos, which is where that extra money was supposed to come from? Is that an indication that you had?
Don, do you want to answer that? Because you were right at the front end of
There's sure. If I could answer that, Mr. Chair. There was a bidder who was substantially lower in price, who promised commercial condos, but we did not get. We've looked at the market for commercial condos out there and found that this bidder had one site out for probably 4 or 5 years and had not sold. Had sold only about a third of the site. It was a much smaller site. So, A, we didn't think the market was accepting of this kind of thing, and B, his bid was about 2/3 of the bid of the winning bid.
Yeah, my question wasn't about that. It was about the direction that the city planning and economic development were pursuing for this site, which of course are partners.
Yeah, they wanted it to stay as industrial.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then I want to ask you, Madam Auditor General, is it typical that once something is in a process, and I don't know if you looked at this and you might have to continue looking at it, because I'm going to move this to the next, I'm going to bump this to the next meeting, Mr. Chair, but I'd like the auditor to look at, after this was a long process, we agree on that. that there was a bid, it was being done, and it was within the zoning, that a councillor, I believe, came forward and said somebody else wanted to bid. They made phone calls. They tried to have this particular piece stopped, and another bidder entered into that. Are you aware of that process, Madam Auditor General, or do you need to look at that a bit more?
We are aware of the unsolicited bid. We dealt with that on page 11 of the report.
And do you deal with the councillor's role in that?
We looked at the
Unsolicited bid?
So we looked at the unsolicited bid as a bid, and we felt that it came later in the process while the transaction was in flight and a lot of negotiation had happened, and it was after the first round when a proponent dropped out. Then you had the open bidding that was moving along, and then the unsolicited bid came in later at a higher value. But we felt that there's risk with that because of the negotiations that happened around the environmental aspects. So we felt because you had gone through an open process, it had been, an offer had been accepted, it was being processed. We felt that being able to rely on that was the appropriate approach.
Yeah, I understand. I'm asking if it's typical, or you found any problem that in the middle of a transaction, having received a bid, that an unsolicited bid came in and that a councillor apparently was boosting that bid and making calls to try to have that looked at. Did you cover that off in your report?
That the actions of a councillor would be something for the integrity commissioner if there was a concern there, and that might be where this recommendation goes if there's something there that you're concerned about. I was looking at how CreateTO handled the unsolicited offer not to move into that, and I felt that was the right decision by the board.
Correct. But I believe that CreateTO executives had many calls about this in the middle of the transaction, and I'm not sure that's right. So I don't know if you had a chance to talk to the integrity commissioner, but Mr. Chair, I'm just moving this item to the next meeting, please.
To your,
refer it to the next one.
Just to answer your question, I wasn't aware that the calls were going to the members of the board during the transaction.
No, going to the
and
staff.
And that would be certainly something to move forward, and to staff, yes.
They were going to staff.
My report needs to be the board.
It's the transaction that you were reviewing and the board. So, and the board did know that. So I'm just going to, Mr. Chair, just ask to have this report come back. Thank you. Refer it to the next meeting, December meeting. Thank you.
So we're, okay.
I'll just say I'm concerned. I did not know that in referring it, I was unclear that the Auditor General was reviewing that whether this was a fair transaction or not, but I can't see that it should be reviewed without looking at the unsolicited bid, the many calls that were made about the unsolicited bid, trying to stop the transaction in midstream. And I'm not sure that if we're looking at this whole item, Mr. Chair, then that has to also be added. So I'd prefer to have this come back in December. And now that the Auditor General is aware of that, I'm sure she's quite surprised and might figure out how to continue looking at this issue.
So I just need to understand whether or not, as the Auditor General had pointed out, whether this is not just a matter for the Integrity Commissioner versus...
The Auditor General has it, when she knows about that, she has a right and I believe obligation. The accountability officers work together. So I would ask her, now that she's aware of this, how she'd like to proceed with that on other... But yeah, so that's why I just want to get it out of here now and bring it back in whatever conversation in December. Thank you.
So then you'll be making, so then just to be clear, we need a motion from...
Correct.
You,
correct. Right? Referring it to December meeting.
Okay. And Carol, do you have that?
It'll be a motion to defer the item to the December
Yes,
meeting.
please.
And we'll
Yep.
put it on the screen in seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ron, I have a question.
Is that you, Sandra?
It is. I just understand, Councillor Fletcher, with due respect, I'm trying to understand how we as board members can add what seems like evidence. In this scenario, I'm not clear. If we're looking at Auditor General's review and the finding, and then suddenly adding new evidence, it seems odd that we would do that in a board meeting.
I don't think
I just want to understand how this process works.
This is if I can, this is our first time to see this report, and that someone asked the Auditor General to look at this, and the transaction has been cleared that it was fine, as you may or not remember, and we may have to go in camera to deal with some of this, but it was a very bumpy ride for quite a while around this transaction, and I did not know she was unaware of a number of other things that were going on with the staff and perhaps calls, etc. So I don't know if that's relevant to her, but I think that she deserves to be able to look at those facts and see if she has anything to say or wants to do anything with it once she understands them. That's right. So that's fair. This is a very serious matter. It's a serious matter, folks.
Yeah, I think what Sandra is really getting at is that if there are matters that councillors are doing with respect to CreateTO or any of our lands, really is it up to CreateTO? Is it the Integrity Commissioner that looks at these things in totality? Is it really up to the board to be instituting these types of proceedings versus
I'm not instituting a proceeding. I'm giving new information to the Auditor General related to her investigation of its sale and a transaction by staff of CreateTO and the board of CreateTO. And she can let us know that she's interested or not in December.
But
full stop.
Okay, right, but before we go on, I mean, this report, let's just start with, Brian, how did this report get started to begin with?
A complaint was made to the Auditor General that we did not handle this properly. That's this, and the Auditor General has said we handled it properly. She's saying that everything's fine from our end. I'm letting her know that there was other things that went on there. And,
I understand.
That's it.
Right. I just want to do this step by step here, just so that everybody's clear. There was somebody that requested that this be reviewed. That something, has in fact been reviewed, and the Auditor General has come back and reported on that. So now the question really is now that there's somebody's bringing up something else. So I don't know if.
That's fine. Yep.
Yeah. So that's the only question that I think that where even Sandra's getting, and as I. Is it another step in between there that says, well, now we want something else looked at versus what's the original kind of task?
Well,
so Councillor Fletcher and Mr. Vice Chair, I think I just want clarification, and perhaps the Auditor General can clarify. Yes. I just don't want us to be adding another layer unnecessarily if the job was done based on the complaint, and then we're adding as a board in a board meeting what I see as evidence. I just want to understand if that's appropriate, or is there
I think you're right.
route that we should be looking at to deal with any allegations of wrongdoing or inappropriate behavior by a counselor. That's my only concern.
I think you're right. Good call, Sandra. Let's hear what she has to say. How she'd like that dealt with.
Maybe we can just have staff review with the Auditor General, like if there's next steps and potentially involve the Integrity Commission or something along those lines.
I think that now you're interfering more.
That's why I said I have this one thing that was somebody had made an inquiry, and now I'd like to close that inquiry if we could. So the inquiry came into the Auditor General. The Auditor General is reviewed, and we're done. If we're not going to go to another, I'd like to just potentially just RA 17.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, Mr. Chair. I'll remove that and let everyone know that I will personally speak to the Auditor General, because I think there's other parts to this. Thank you.
Right. And I think that if you then come back with another motion with respect to it, like another start or something. Yeah, I got it. Okay, so then if we can then...
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Oh.
I just have, based on this, I just have a question for the Auditor General. Auditor General, you have the power to come back with another report if you find more information and further action needs to be taken on anything or recommendation, correct?
You're breaking up, actually. It's very difficult for me to hear, but I think the question is, in relation to this matter, is there further action that should be taken? Is that correct?
No, you could, if you deemed necessary, you can always come back with another report if you learn for any other facts on this case, correct?
I can, yes. The answer is yes. But to investigate counselors, the Integrity Commissioner may be the right body, so I will work with him to see what the right approach would be here and come back to the board if that's helpful.
Yes, that would be great. Let's do that. So for the time being then, if there's no other questions, I will move to adopt the recommendations in the report. And if I can get everybody's, ask if everybody's okay with that, motion on the floor. Can I see everyone's hand? All those in favor? Sandra, thank you. Councillor Baila, Dennis, thank you. Let me just see. Do I have Marnie? I can't remember if I could see.
Voting yes, because you can't see my hand.
And I've got you, Councillor Fletcher. Thank you. Marcy?
I don't know if you can see me, Mr. Chair, but my hand is up.
The video is not coming in very well for me, so if everyone could just also say aye, that'd be great. Okay, I think I've got everybody. Okay, so that motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we've got RA 17.6, which is a CreateTO staffing and compensation. I believe that there's a confidential attachment which everybody has, and I think I'm going to stand this down to the closed unless there's anyone that would like to speak or ask questions in the public session at this point. Okay, we'll move that to closed. And now we've got RA 17.7, which is the position of the CEO for CreateTO. As noted in my letter to the board, Brian Johnson is stepping down from his position as CEO on October 16th. And as such, this will be the last meeting for Brian. So before we get into discussions on process or things along those lines, I want to take this opportunity to extend our appreciation to you, Brian, on behalf of the board for your leadership and skill in such organization, moving the organization forward with many building initiatives such as the Housing Now, the Rail Deck Park, redevelopment of the Etobicoke Civic Center. There is a litany of items that you've been part of, and we really appreciate all the work and effort that you've put in and provided to the people of the City of Toronto, and we wish you all the best. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. Appreciate those comments.
So I'm going to be also deferring RA 17.7. There's some other items to speak to in that, and we'll move all that into closed session. So to be clear, we've got 17.4 going into closed. Brian would ask you to still stay into closed to provide an update on 17.4 if you can. And then 17.6 is going into closed, as well as 17.7. We
So,
now, I guess we'll have...
On 17.4, can we have Ryan Glenn and Nick Simos in on that one as well? Because it's not uncomplicated, and I think it might be helpful to have them available on that.
Oh, sure. Happy to have them give us an update on that as well, so they can come into closed. So I will move the motion to ask the clerk to display and read the motion aloud to go into closed.
No, you're on the wrong item. It's on item 1, Jennifer. Just take us a moment, sorry.
Okay, there we have the motion up on the screen. Go ahead, Carol.
The motion is that the Board of Directors of CreateTO resets its public session to meet in closed session to consider the following items. RA 17.4, proposal for long-term land lease, strategic city-owned property, as it pertains to proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the Board of Directors of CreateTO in the City of Toronto. RA 17.6, CreateTO staffing and compensation update as it involves employee negotiations and receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, and RA 17.7, position of Chief Executive Officer, CreateTO, as it pertains to employee negotiations, personal information about identifiable individuals, and advice or communications that are subject to solicitor-client privilege.
All right, and I'll move that motion, and all those in favor to go into closed. Thank you, Sandra. Marnie.
In favor.
Councilor Fletcher. Dennis, thanks. Marcy. And I think we've got everyone. Councilor Bailao, are you?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm just having problems with my sound, so I have to turn my video off.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. So that motion carries. I'd ask the clerk to temporarily close the meeting to members of the public and provide access to members and staff. So we're going to have Nick Simos. Who else was it, Brian, that you wanted?
Ryan Glenn as well.
Oh, right. Ryan Glenn. I think we're also keeping Dan Shields in closed, and I think Steve Trumper will stay in closed. Is there anybody else that should be coming into closed that I'm forgetting? Nope. Okay. Then
just give us a moment to stop the YouTube feed, and then we can confirm who's on the call, and those that don't need to be in closed session, we can move you into the lobby and bring you back after closed session. So just give us a moment.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we are back in public session. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Okay, so we're going to come back to item RA 17.4, and I will move to adopt the recommendations in the report and ask all those in favor.
Favor?
In favor?
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Sandra. And okay, that motion carries. Okay, and going to 17.6, we've got the recommendations. I think we can do two of them at once. I think there's two motions. If we could put those up on the screen, perhaps, Carol.
We'll put Councillor Fletcher's on the screen first.
Okay, so.
And the other part is to adopt the recommendations in the report, which we can also put on the screen for you.
Okay, thanks. I will move both motions and call for a vote. All those in favor?
In favor?
Thank you, Dennis.
In favor?
Thanks. Marnie? I got you there. Okay, thank you. Okay, those motions collectively all pass. Thank you. And now we're going to go to all right, we've got the first motion, Carol, I think. So first one will be adopting Stephen Trumper as interim CEO of CreateTO as of October 16th. Just to say a few words, we are fortunate to have someone who can readily step in and assume this leadership role for CreateTO. Steve has the institutional knowledge and a wealth of experience with the organization to successfully oversee the continued management of the city's real estate portfolio. And we appreciate Steve taking on this role until a permanent CEO is appointed. Thanks so much, Steve. We all very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. I'm very honored to take on this role, and I look forward to working with all of the board and the broader city stakeholder community and our own staff in taking on this role.
And I will make the motion and be honored to make the motion to appoint you as interim CEO. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Anna. Dennis?
Yes, in favor.
Thank you very much. That motion passes, and thank you again, Steve. We've got some follow-up motions now. I believe we have a motion from Dennis. Maybe you can put that on the screen for us, Carol. Thank you. All right. So Dennis has moved a motion that the interim CEO report to the board at a special meeting in November to be called by the vice chair with a recommendation for an executive leadership team drawn from the current staff to assist in the daily financial, operational, and development affairs of the business and the successful execution of CreateTO's corporate goals as established by the board and city council. And And at this meeting, the interim CEO also provide the board with an overview of current HR policies and procedures at CreateTO. And we'll just ask for a vote in that. All those in favor? Arnie, thanks. Marcy,
In favor?
Thanks. Sandra, thank you.
In favor?
Thanks. That motion carries. Thank you very much. And I believe we have one final motion. And this one is that the board of CreateTO establish a recruitment process for the CEO of CreateTO, including CEO search selection panel of 3 members of the board of CreateTO to include the vice chair, the mayor's designate, and the director, Sandra Levy. Directing the interim CEO to assign the appropriate staff to support the work of the selection panel and request any further support, and directing the CEO's search selection panel to select an executive search firm throughout the appropriate procurement process and report to the December 4th meeting on the progress of the CEO recruitment. And I will move that motion. And if I can take a vote, all those in favor?
In favor?
Thank you. Anna?
In favor?
All right. And I see you, Councillor Fletcher. Thank you. Okay, so that motion passes. And I believe that, Carol, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Do we have any other matters that I'm missing?
That's everything for today, Mr. Chair.
And then I will move to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Vice Chair, could I just remind all board members that in order to join the corporate board meeting, you need to log off of this WebEx call and then re-log in to a new WebEx call, which should be in the calendar invitation in your Outlook.
Got it. Thank you. So all those in favor to adjourn?
In favor?
Thank you. All right. Well, we've got everybody. That's it. Thank you very much. And we will see some of you back on the corporate board meeting. Thanks, everyone.